So, have you ever really stopped to think about how we got here? And I don't just mean you and me, I mean all of this, our entire society. Well, we're about to trace this incredible journey right here on the Indian subcontinent. We're going to follow the path from the earliest hunter just trying to survive, all the way to a powerful king ruling over a massive kingdom. You ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, but right away, that brings up a huge question, doesn't it? With no written records, no eyewitnesses, and, well, nothing but the silence of thousands of years, how can we possibly know what actually happened? How do you piece together a story from the dust of time?
I mean, think about it. If you want to know what happened yesterday, you're flooded with information. You've got news, TV, radio, people you can ask. But trying to understand life 10,000 years ago, historians are facing a deep, profound silence. There was no writing, there were no cities, and there's nobody left to ask. That challenge, reaching across that enormous gulf of time, is just immense. So what's the answer? Well, we rely on detectives of the past, historians and archaeologists. They're the ones who sift through the earth, finding clues in absolutely everything, from tiny little seeds to the ruins of massive buildings. They reconstruct our story piece by piece. So for the rest of this journey, we're going to be following their trail of evidence.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. We're talking about the first, most fundamental challenge that the earliest people on the subcontinent faced, the simple problem of survival. For a stretch of time that's almost impossible to imagine, we're talking nearly 2 million years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. And really, their name tells you everything you need to know about their life. They were true experts of their environment, you know? They had this deep, intricate knowledge of plants, animals, and the rhythm of all the seasons. But that lifestyle meant one thing for sure: they could never, ever stay in one place for long. And this wasn't really a choice, it was a pure necessity. If they stayed put, they would simply run out of food. It's as simple as that. They had to follow the herds they hunted, move with the seasons as different plants became ripe, and constantly search for water. Their whole life was this constant, nomadic solution to the problem of finding their next meal.
And then, something happened. Something that completely changed the game. Humanity found a solution to the food problem, and honestly, it was a revolution that set the stage for everything, and I mean everything, that followed. It all started with a change in the environment. About 12,000 years ago, the climate started getting warmer. This led to the spread of huge grasslands, and growing in those grasslands were new, green-bearing grasses. Yep, the wild ancestors of the wheat, barley, and rice that we all eat today. This climate shift led to one of the most important ideas in all of human history: domestication. See, people didn't just gather these new grains, they actually started to control them. They began to grow plants and raise animals, actively choosing the best ones. This was a monumental shift in thinking. For the first time ever, humans weren't just finding food, they were producing it. And you know, this didn't just happen overnight. It was this slow, gradual process of learning. First, people just observed. They saw how plants grew, then they started protecting them, shooing away birds and animals, and finally, they began selecting the very best seeds from the strongest plants to save and plant for the next year. Over many, many generations, this careful process turned wild grasses into the reliable crops we know. And our historical detectives, they found the proof. At ancient sites like Mehrgar, they've literally unearthed the actual remains of early crops, wheat, barley, right alongside the bones of the first domesticated sheep and goats. Every single grain, every single bone is a piece of hard evidence that tells the story of the very first farmers. So the farming revolution was a huge success, but like any big success, it created a brand new challenge. With a stable food supply, populations started to grow, and people began to settle down in one place. This led to a totally new problem, the organization problem. This next big change brings us to about 4,700 years ago. This is when some of the world's earliest cities began to pop up and flourish along the banks of the Indus River and all its tributaries. And this created a whole new set of questions they had to answer. Once you have thousands and thousands of people living right on top of each other, how do you manage it all? How do you get everyone water, deal with all the waste, coordinate huge building projects? Basically, how do you create order out of what could easily become chaos? The solution they came up with was just incredible: sophisticated urban planning.
Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro weren't just a random jumble of buildings. No, they were masterpieces of design. We're talking about fortified citadels, orderly lower towns, streets laid out in a perfect grid, and even advanced covered drainage systems. These weren't just cities, they were engineered solutions to the problem of organization. Okay, so as these societies grew even larger and more complex, yet another problem started to emerge. With more people, more land, and more wealth, a new question popped up: who's in charge here? This was the problem of power. And this is where we see the solutions start to take shape. The whole idea of a ruler, a raja, began to change dramatically. The early rajas were leaders chosen by their people, the jana. But as territories grew into these vast kingdoms, or mahajanapadas, a totally new kind of ruler appeared. This was someone who claimed power through huge, elaborate rituals, who built professional armies, and who collected regular taxes. Power was becoming centralized, and it was becoming hereditary.
And this new kind of power required a whole new kind of infrastructure to support it. Rulers started building these massive forts around their capitals to protect them and to show off their strength. They created professional armies, paying soldiers regular salaries, and they organized complex tax systems, collecting money from crops and crafts to pay for it all. A new, much more powerful model of society had just been born.
So we've journeyed all the way from the wandering hunter to the powerful king, from solving the problem of survival to food to organization and finally to power. So what does this long, unbroken chain of history really mean for us today?
Just take a look at the scale of this journey when it's all laid out, from those first tentative steps of domestication all the way to the rise of great kingdoms. You can really see how each step was a revolutionary leap forward, but a leap that was built entirely on the foundation of the one that came before it. And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. The world that we live in today, our cities, our farms, our governments, it is the direct result of these ancient problems and the ingenious solutions that our ancestors came up with. Our present is completely and fundamentally shaped by our past.
And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. This whole journey of societal evolution, it didn't just stop with the first kingdoms. It's still happening right now. We went from scattered tribes to sprawling cities to powerful kingdoms. So the big question for us is, what's next?